The news broke like a thunderclap in the serene, sun-drenched city of Lucerne. Adrian Voss, the 43-year-old billionaire CEO of a global tech empire, was not just any wealthy man. He was a titan of industry, a man who had built his fortune from nothing, and he was known for his sharp business acumen and an even sharper temper. His name was synonymous with power, and his presence in any room commanded immediate attention. But on this particular Tuesday afternoon, and his power was about to collide with a force far older and more formidable than any market share or corporate takeover. He had been a guest at a prestigious state function, a luncheon held at the Royal Palace to honor foreign investors. Adrian, accustomed to being the center of attention, had grown increasingly impatient with the formalities. He saw the world in terms of transactions, and to him, the royal family was simply another powerful entity to be courted, another deal to be made. He felt the elaborate protocols and ancient traditions were a tedious waste of his valuable time. As the luncheon concluded and guests began to mingle on the grand terrace overlooking the lake, Adrian spotted the crown prince across the room. He decided this was his moment. He would approach the prince, bypassing the swarm of lesser nobles and advisors, and secure a direct line of communication for a lucrative infrastructure project he was pitching. And he strode forward with his characteristic confidence, his expensive shoes clicking against the polished marble floor. A young royal guard, immaculate in his dress uniform, stood at the entrance to a more private section of the terrace where the prince was conversing. As Adrian approached, the guard, whose name was Lucas, held his ground, his posture rigid. Adrian, expecting him to step aside, barely acknowledged him. He made to walk past, but Lucas subtly shifted his position, a silent, immovable barrier. "I need to speak with the prince," Adrian said, his tone clipped and dismissive. Lucas's eyes, calm and steady, met the CEO's. "I'm sorry, sir. The prince is in a private meeting. No one is to pass." Adrian's jaw tightened. He was not used to being told no. "This is important. It's about the economic partnership. He'll want to see me." Lucas gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. "I have my orders, sir. No one passes." The conversation around them on the terrace seemed to dim for Adrian. All he could see was this uniformed obstacle, this lowly guard, daring to defy him. He felt a surge of hot, irrational rage. He was Adrian Voss. He could buy and sell this entire country's GDP. Who was this man to stop him? In a moment of catastrophic arrogance, Adrian did the unthinkable. He drew back his hand and, with all the contempt he felt, slapped Lucas hard across the face. The sharp, a wet sound echoed, silencing the nearby chatter. Lucas's head snapped to the side, a red mark instantly blooming on his cheek. He didn't raise a hand to defend himself, nor did his expression change from one of stoic professionalism. He simply straightened his head and looked at Adrian, his gaze now holding a chilling, unreadable depth. For a second, there was a vacuum of silence. Then chaos. Two other guards materialized instantly, their hands on their ceremonial sabers. A senior palace official rushed over, his face pale with horror. Adrian, for the first time, felt a flicker of unease. He saw the shock, not just on the faces of the staff, but on the faces of the other guests, who were now staring at him as if he were a monster. He tried to recover. He pulled out his wallet, a sleek, black leather billfold, and extracted a thick wad of cash. He held it out to Lucas. "Here, for your trouble. A misunderstanding." The gesture was so profoundly insulting, so completely missing the point, that it deepened the collective horror. Lucas didn't even glance at the money. He just continued to stare at Adrian, his silence more damning than any shout. Before Adrian could make the situation even worse, which seemed impossible, the senior official, a man named Herr Kohler, intervened. His voice was low and trembling with a controlled fury. "Mr. Voss, you will come with me, immediately." He didn't touch Adrian, but his tone left no room for argument. Our Adrian, for once, complied, his mind racing to calculate the damage and how to mitigate it. He was led not to a waiting car, but to a small, ornate anteroom. The door closed behind him with a soft but final click. He was alone. He paced, pulling out his phone. No signal. The walls were thick stone. He tried the door. Locked. A cold dread began to seep into his bones, a feeling he hadn't experienced since his early, struggling days. This was different. This wasn't a hostile takeover or a bad press cycle. This felt personal. Hours passed. The golden afternoon light outside the small window turned to a bruised purple, then to black. No one came. Not with coffee, not with an apology, not with a lawyer. He was utterly alone with his thoughts, which were becoming increasingly frantic. He replayed the moment, seeing his own hand, the flash of anger, the sickening sound of the slap. He saw Lucas's unwavering eyes. For the first time in his adult life, Adrian Voss felt genuinely afraid. The silence of the room was absolute, broken only by the frantic thumping of his own heart. He, who commanded boardrooms and controlled billions, was powerless behind a locked door, waiting for a judgment he couldn't begin to predict. The opulent room, with its silk walls and gilded furniture, felt less like a holding cell and more like a gilded cage, a waiting room for a reckoning. The night stretched on, and each minute an eternity, as the reality of his actions began to dawn on him, not as a PR problem, but as a profound, perhaps unforgivable transgression. The clock on the ornate mantelpiece ticked past midnight, then 1, then 2, a steady, mocking reminder that in this place, he was nobody. Dawn finally broke, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and gold that felt utterly at odds with Adrian's state of mind. He hadn't slept. He had spent the night cycling through rage, disbelief, and a growing, gnawing fear. He'd had no water, no food, no communication. He felt grimy, his expensive suit wrinkled, his dignity in tatters. Just as he began to wonder if they had simply forgotten about him, the lock clicked. The door opened to reveal Herr Kohler, the senior palace official from the day before. His face was a mask of professional neutrality, but his eyes were cold. Behind him stood 2 uniformed guards, their expressions equally unreadable. "Mr. Voss," Kohler said, in his voice devoid of any warmth. "Please follow me." Adrian stood, his legs stiff. "I demand to know what's happening. I want to contact my lawyer. I want to contact my embassy." His voice came out rougher than he intended. "All in due time, sir," Kohler replied, turning and walking away. The guards flanked Adrian, leaving him no choice but to follow. They led him through a labyrinth of corridors, past priceless art and ancient tapestries, a stark contrast to the cold. A functional world of glass and steel Adrian inhabited. They finally stopped before a set of heavy dark wood doors. Kohler knocked once, a soft, respectful rap, and then opened the door, gesturing for Adrian to enter alone. He stepped into a library. It was a vast, circular room, 2 stories high, with bookshelves lining every wall. A fire crackled softly in a large stone fireplace. In a high-backed leather armchair facing the fire sat an old man. He was dressed in simple, elegant clothes, and then he held a book in his gnarled hands. As Adrian entered, the man closed the book and placed it on a side table. He slowly rose to his feet. It was the king. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. He had seen the king from a distance at the luncheon, a regal figure. Up close, he saw an old man with kind, intelligent eyes that were now fixed on him with a quiet intensity. The king did not offer a handshake. He simply gestured to a chair opposite his own. "Sit down, Mr. Voss," the king said. And his voice was calm, measured, and carried the weight of a lifetime of authority. Adrian sat, his mind racing. He opened his mouth to speak, to apologize, to explain, to threaten, to do something. But the king raised a hand, silencing him before a single word could escape. "I have watched the recording of yesterday's incident several times," the king began, his tone conversational. "I have also spoken at length with the guard, Lucas. He is a fine young man. His father was a guard before him, and his grandfather. They have served this family for 3 generations, with unwavering loyalty and honor." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You struck him, Mr. Voss, not because he was an obstacle, but because you could not fathom being told no by someone you perceived as beneath you. You then tried to pay him, compounding your assault with an insult so profound it reveals a complete failure of character." The king's eyes never left Adrian's. "Your money, your companies, your influence, they hold no meaning within these walls. Here we have a different currency. It is called respect. It is called honor, and you are utterly bankrupt." The words hit Adrian like physical blows. He had been yelled at by investors, threatened by competitors, but he had never been spoken to with such quiet, devastating contempt. He tried again. "Your Majesty, it was a moment of madness. I was frustrated, tired. I apologize most profusely. I will do anything to make amends." "Anything?" the king asked, a flicker of something, perhaps curiosity, in his eyes. "Yes, anything," Adrian said eagerly, sensing a potential opening. "A substantial donation to a royal charity, a public apology, whatever you deem necessary." The king shook his head slowly. "You still don't understand. This is not a transaction. You cannot buy your way out of this. The law will, of course, take its course. You will be charged with assault. And that is a matter for the courts, but that is the least of your concerns." He stood up, walking over to the fireplace and gazing into the flames. "The consequences you face are far greater than a fine or even a short jail sentence. The story of what you did is already spreading, not through press releases, but through whispers. In the world of international business, reputation is everything. And yours, Mr. Voss, is now tarnished in a way that no amount of money can polish." He turned back to face Adrian. "The Crown Prince's infrastructure deal? It is dead. My cousin who sits on the board of your largest European partner? He is deeply troubled by what he has heard. The Sovereign Wealth Fund that was considering a major investment in your company? They value partners who understand dignity and protocol." With each word, Adrian felt the ground giving way beneath him. The king wasn't just talking about a single incident. He was outlining the systematic dismantling of years of work. It was a bloodless, elegant, and utterly ruthless consequence. "You see, Mr. Voss," the king concluded, returning to his chair, "in your world you strike first and ask questions later. In ours we think before we act, and when we act we think several moves ahead. Your slap was a moment of impulse. My response will be a lifetime of consequence. You are not my prisoner. You are free to go. Your lawyer is waiting for you at the city police station, where you will be formally charged. But I wanted you to understand, before you left, the true cost of what you have done." The king picked up his book, signaling the audience was over. He didn't look at Adrian again. The door opened behind him, and the guards were there. Adrian rose on unsteady legs. He had entered the room with a sliver of hope that he could negotiate his way out. He left it with the chilling realization that he had just witnessed the beginning of his own downfall, orchestrated with a patience and precision he could never hope to match.